Everyone believed Evelyn Brooks had betrayed the DeMarco family. 3 days before one of the most powerful Mafia weddings in the country, Gabriel DeMarco's plus-size assistant vanished without a word, taking several confidential files with her. His fiancée called her a traitor. His advisors demanded blood. Even the evidence seemed impossible to ignore. But Gabriel couldn't silence the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Instead of sending armed men to hunt her down, he drove alone to the crumbling apartment where Evelyn lived. When no one answered, he forced the door open. Inside, he found the woman everyone had condemned lying unconscious on a cold bathroom floor, clutching a blood-stained flash drive. With her final strength, she whispered 7 words that shattered everything he believed. "Don't marry Isabella. It's all a trap." 5 years. That was how long Evelyn Brooks had worked for Gabriel DeMarco, without taking a single unscheduled day off. She arrived before everyone else every morning and usually left long after midnight. She remembered every password, every shipment, every meeting, every debt, and every promise Gabriel had ever made. If someone wanted to know where a contract had been signed 3 years ago, or which shipping container had crossed the harbor on a rainy Tuesday night, they didn't ask Gabriel. They asked Evelyn. To outsiders, however, she barely existed. She was the plus-size assistant, quietly sitting outside the boss's office, dressed in plain cardigans and practical shoes, carrying folders instead of weapons. Most visitors forgot her face moments after walking past her desk. Gabriel never underestimated her. He simply assumed she would always be there. That assumption shattered on a grey Thursday morning. "Evelyn still hasn't checked in," Oliver Pierce said, placing a tablet on Gabriel's desk. Gabriel barely looked up from the wedding contract spread before him. "Call her." "I already did." "No answer." Oliver slowly shook his head. "Her phone has been disconnected." Gabriel frowned. That wasn't like Evelyn. Not even close. She had once answered work calls while sitting beside her mother in an emergency room. Missing work without notice simply wasn't part of who she was. When did anyone last see her? 3 nights ago. The room fell silent. 3 nights. Exactly the same night, several encrypted financial files disappeared from the private vault. The timing was impossible to ignore. Within an hour, rumors flooded the DeMarco estate. Someone had stolen confidential information. Someone inside the organization had betrayed the family. By lunchtime, everyone had already decided who that person was. Evelyn Brooks, even before any investigation began. When Isabella Kensington entered Gabriel's office wearing an elegant white suit, her expression carried more annoyance than concern. "I warned you," she said softly. Gabriel looked at her. "Warned me about what?" She was too quiet. He raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" "It means people like Evelyn spend years watching everyone else. They wait for the perfect opportunity." Oliver shifted uncomfortably beside the window. Isabella continued. "She vanished with classified files 3 days before our wedding." She folded her arms. "If that isn't betrayal, I don't know what is." Gabriel remained silent. Not because he agreed, because something refused to fit. Evelyn had controlled access to information for years. If she intended to betray him, she could have disappeared months earlier with enough evidence to destroy the entire organization. Why now? Why only days before the wedding? Why leave behind almost everything she owned? By late afternoon, Gabriel stood alone inside Evelyn's office. Everything looked exactly as she had left it. The coffee mug still sat beside the keyboard. Sticky notes covered the monitor with reminders for meetings that would happen next week. A medical bill rested beneath a stack of invoices. Beside it lay a handwritten grocery list. Milk, soup, medicine. Nothing suggested someone planning to disappear forever. He slowly opened the bottom drawer of her desk. Inside were neatly organized notebooks, spare reading glasses, and dozens of handwritten schedules. Nothing valuable, nothing stolen. His eyes settled on a framed photograph. Evelyn stood beside an older woman in a wheelchair, both smiling despite obvious exhaustion. Her mother. Gabriel realized something that made his stomach tighten. In 5 years, he had never once asked Evelyn about her family. Not once. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Oliver stepped inside. We found her address. Gabriel looked up immediately. Where? Oliver hesitated. You won't like it. 20 minutes later, Gabriel's black sedan rolled into one of the oldest neighborhoods on the city's south side. The streets were cracked. Street lights flickered even before sunset. Most apartment buildings looked as though they had survived decades of neglect through sheer stubbornness. Gabriel stared through the windshield. This can't be right. Oliver checked the paper again. Apartment 4C. Gabriel frowned. I pay her enough to live anywhere she wants. Apparently, she didn't. The building smelled of damp concrete and old pipes. Every step on the narrow staircase echoed through the hallway. Apartment 4C stood at the end of the corridor. Gabriel knocked. No answer. He knocked harder. Silence. He reached for the doorknob. Locked. His instincts sharpened. Something felt terribly wrong. Evelyn, he called. Nothing. Then, a faint metallic smell drifted beneath the door. Blood. Without another second of hesitation, Gabriel stepped back. One powerful kick splintered the aging lock. The door burst inward. Cold air spilled from the dark apartment. Gabriel crossed the threshold, scanning every corner. The living room was almost empty. A folding table, an old laptop, stacks of carefully labeled folders. No television, no decorations, no signs of comfort, only survival. Then he noticed it. A thin trail of dried blood leading down the hallway. Toward the bathroom, Gabriel reached for the pistol beneath his jacket as his heartbeat accelerated. He followed the trail. The bathroom door stood half open. Inside, someone lay motionless on the floor. Gabriel pushed the bathroom door open with one hand, his pistol leading the way. Then he froze. Evelyn Brooks lay crumpled against the bathtub, her oversized sweater soaked with dried blood. One trembling hand rested over a deep knife wound in her side. The other clutched a small black flash drive, so tightly her fingers had turned white. She looked nothing like the composed woman who had managed his empire every day for 5 years. She looked exhausted, starved, alone. The room was freezing. The heater had long since stopped working, and the only sound came from a dripping faucet. Gabriel knelt beside her. Evelyn. No response. He carefully pressed 2 fingers against her neck. A pulse. Weak. But still there. He released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Evelyn, it's Gabriel. Her eyelids fluttered slightly. She struggled to focus before recognizing his face. For a brief second, relief softened the fear in her eyes. You came yourself, she whispered. I should have come sooner. She tried to smile, but pain stole the expression before it formed. They're watching. Gabriel immediately scanned the apartment again. No movement. No broken windows. No sign that anyone remained inside. Only silence. He slipped the flash drive from her trembling hand. I've got it. No. Her fingers weakly reached toward him. Hide it. I will. She relaxed only after hearing those words. Gabriel noticed fresh bruises around her wrists, cuts across her knuckles, a torn sleeve stained with blood. This hadn't been a robbery. Someone had questioned her. Someone had expected her to surrender whatever was stored on the flash drive. She never did. Evelyn. Her breathing became uneven. Who did this? She swallowed painfully. I couldn't trust anyone. Tell me. Her lips trembled. They're inside. Gabriel leaned closer. Who? She looked directly into his eyes. The wedding. A violent cough interrupted her. Blood stained the corner of her mouth. Gabriel reached for a clean towel hanging beside the sink and pressed it gently against the wound. We're leaving. She shook her head. They'll follow. They won't. You don't understand. Then help me understand. She closed her eyes for several seconds before forcing them open again. Don't marry Isabella. Her voice was barely audible. It's a trap. Gabriel's expression hardened. What do you mean? The alliance. Another painful breath. Was never real. He remained perfectly still. Outside, rain began striking the apartment window. The Kensington family, Evelyn whispered, doesn't want your empire. They want. She fought to stay conscious. What remains after you're dead. The words settled over the tiny bathroom like ice. Gabriel had spent months negotiating the marriage alliance. Every lawyer had approved it. Every advisor had celebrated it. Every financial projection promised unimaginable expansion. Yet Evelyn looked terrified, not confused, certain. She wasn't guessing. She knew. How? I found transfers. She nodded weakly toward the hallway. Laptop, hidden accounts, payments to someone inside your family. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Who? I couldn't finish. They found me first! The room spun around Evelyn as another wave of fever overtook her. I copied everything. The flash drive. Is proof. Her head slowly tilted sideways. Evelyn? She no longer answered. Gabriel lifted her carefully into his arms. She weighed far less than he expected. For the first time, he realized something that filled him with quiet guilt. Everyone called Evelyn the plus-size assistant. Yet beneath the oversized sweaters she always wore was a body weakened by exhaustion, skipped meals, and years of putting everyone else's needs before her own. She had hidden her suffering as carefully as she had hidden his secrets. As Gabriel carried her through the apartment, his eyes paused on the nearly empty kitchen. 1 cabinet, 3 cans of soup, half a loaf of stale bread, expired medicine, nothing else. This was how the woman protecting millions of dollars had been living. He remembered every expensive bonus he had approved, every luxury gift exchanged during wedding planning, every celebration. Not once had he wondered why Evelyn always declined invitations to company dinners. Not once had he asked if she needed help. Outside, Oliver stared in disbelief as Gabriel emerged, carrying Evelyn. My God! Call Dr. Sutton, Gabriel ordered. Not through headquarters. Oliver blinked. Our private physician. No. Gabriel's voice turned cold. If there's a traitor inside my organization, then I trust no one connected to it. Oliver nodded immediately. Gabriel opened the rear door of the sedan and laid Evelyn across the seat as gently as if she were made of glass. Just before losing consciousness again, she caught his sleeve. There are copies. Where? My mother's nursing home. Locker 17. And Gabriel. Yes? If anything happens to me. He interrupted her quietly. It won't. For the first time since he'd known her, Evelyn allowed herself to believe him. Her hand slipped from his sleeve, The car pulled away from the apartment. Behind them, neither man noticed the dark SUV parked across the street. Inside, someone lifted a phone. They found her. A calm voice answered, then moved to phase 2. By sunrise, only 4 people knew Evelyn Brooks was still alive. Gabriel, Oliver Pierce, Dr. Harold Sutton, and Evelyn herself. Everyone else, including Isabella Kensington, believed the missing assistant was still on the run. Gabriel intended to keep it that way. Dr. Sutton finished changing Evelyn's bandages before stepping into the hallway. The knife missed her liver by less than an inch, he said quietly. Another hour in that apartment, and I couldn't have saved her. Gabriel glanced through the bedroom door. Evelyn was asleep, her breathing finally steady. Can she talk? For short periods? What about working? Harold gave him a sharp look. Absolutely not. Gabriel nodded. She'll still try. So stop her. For the first time in years, someone gave Gabriel an order instead of asking for one. Surprisingly, he agreed. Late that afternoon, Evelyn insisted on sitting at a desk despite Harold's protests. She looked pale, her movements slow, but her eyes remained as focused as ever. Gabriel placed the flash drive beside her laptop. Can you open it? I encrypted it. Can anyone else? She managed a faint smile. Not if they value their computer. Within seconds, lines of code filled the screen. Folders appeared one after another. Shipping manifests, financial transfers, private communications. Then another folder opened. Its title made Gabriel's expression change. Wedding budget. That's not a budget, Evelyn whispered. It never was. She clicked. Instead of invoices, dozens of hidden transactions appeared. Money had been flowing from Kensington-controlled shell companies into secret offshore accounts for nearly 8 months. Every payment ended with the same authorization code. VD-17. Gabriel stared at the screen. I've never used that code. You didn't. Evelyn enlarged another document. It belongs to someone inside your organization. Oliver leaned closer. Can we identify who? Evelyn nodded. If we find where the authorization originated. She opened another file. A digital map appeared. Colored dots marked dozens of secure terminals across the DeMarco organization. One flashed red. Gabriel recognized it immediately. My uncle's office. Silence filled the room. Vincent DeMarco, his father's younger brother, the man who had helped raise Gabriel after his parents died. The man trusted with every major financial decision. Oliver slowly lowered himself into a chair. That's impossible. Gabriel didn't answer. Impossible had become increasingly common over the last 24 hours. Evelyn continued searching. There's more. She opened several deleted emails recovered from encrypted backups. One message had never reached its recipient. Subject: Final transfer before ceremony. Gabriel read every line without speaking. The wedding was never intended to unite 2 families. It was designed to eliminate one. Once the ceremony concluded, Gabriel would attend a private reception aboard one of the DeMarco cargo vessels. The guest list had already been arranged. The security team had already been replaced. Within 2 hours of departure, the ship would disappear at sea. Officially, a tragic accident. Unofficially, the DeMarco Empire would lose its leader. Vincent would assume temporary control. Isabella's father, Damien Kensington, would quietly absorb the shipping network through emergency partnership clauses hidden inside the marriage agreement. Everything had been planned, months in advance. Oliver slowly looked toward Gabriel. They've already divided your empire. Gabriel remained unnervingly calm. No. He folded the laptop closed. They've divided what they think will become theirs. That evening, Gabriel made no public announcements. The wedding remained scheduled. The rehearsal dinner remained unchanged. Every invitation stayed active. He wanted the conspirators comfortable. Confident people made careless mistakes. Meanwhile, Oliver quietly visited Marion Brooks, Evelyn's mother, at the assisted living facility. Locker 17 contained exactly what Evelyn had promised. A second flash drive, printed bank statements, photographs, copies of signed agreements, even handwritten notes linking Vincent to Damien Kensington. When Oliver returned after dark, he spread everything across Gabriel's study. There won't be any denying this. Gabriel examined each document carefully. Years ago, Vincent had taught him a simple rule: never accuse anyone until you can prove they have nowhere left to run. Ironically, Vincent had forgotten his own advice. Just before midnight, Gabriel entered Evelyn's room, carrying 2 cups of tea. She was awake. "You should be sleeping," she said. "So should you." He handed her a cup. She accepted it carefully. Neither spoke for a long moment. Finally, Gabriel broke the silence. "I owe you an apology." She looked surprised. "For what?" "For believing there was even a chance you betrayed me. You weren't the only one. I should have known better. You had evidence. I had assumptions." She lowered her eyes. "I've always been easy to blame." Gabriel frowned. "What does that mean?" She gave a quiet laugh. "I'm the invisible woman, Gabriel. The assistant. The plus-size employee nobody notices unless something goes wrong. When important people enter a room, they remember your suit. They remember Isabella's smile. They remember your expensive watch. No one remembers the woman carrying the folders." She looked toward the window. "I learned a long time ago that invisible people hear everything." Gabriel studied her in silence. How many conversations had she overheard while others dismissed her? How many dangers had she quietly prevented without expecting recognition? 5 years. He suddenly realized she hadn't simply organized his empire. She had protected it, and he had never truly seen the weight she carried. A knock interrupted the moment. Oliver entered without speaking. He placed a sealed envelope on the table. "What is it?" Gabriel asked. It arrived by courier. No sender, no return address. Inside was a single photograph. Gabriel standing outside Evelyn's apartment. Taken the previous day. Across the bottom, someone had typed 5 chilling words. "We know she's still alive." Wedding day arrived beneath a sky heavy with dark clouds. To every guest stepping through the towering doors of St. Augustine Cathedral, everything appeared exactly as planned. Luxury cars lined the streets. Private security officers watched every entrance. Politicians, business executives, judges, and crime bosses filled the front rows in perfectly tailored suits. The marriage between Gabriel DeMarco and Isabella Kensington had become far more than a wedding. It was a public declaration that 2 powerful empires were becoming one. Only Gabriel knew it was about to become something entirely different. He stood alone in a private room behind the sanctuary, fastening the final button on his charcoal suit. Oliver entered quietly. "Our teams are in position." Gabriel nodded. "And Vincent?" "He thinks everything is proceeding according to schedule." "And Isabella?" "She's smiling." Gabriel looked at his reflection one last time. "Good. People smile the widest when they think they've already won." Across the hall, Isabella admired herself in a full-length mirror. Her ivory gown shimmered beneath the lights, and a diamond necklace rested elegantly around her neck. Damien Kensington adjusted his cufflinks. "Everything is ready," he said. The contracts? Already waiting for Gabriel's signature after the ceremony. The ship? Crew replaced. The security detail? Ours. He smiled confidently. By tonight, the DeMarco Empire belongs to us. Neither of them noticed the tiny recording device hidden inside the bouquet resting on the dressing table. Every word was being transmitted directly to Oliver. The cathedral bells began to ring. Guests stood. Music filled the sanctuary. Gabriel walked toward the altar with the calm confidence of a man preparing for his future. Only Oliver noticed the small wireless earpiece hidden beneath his collar. "Recording confirmed," Oliver whispered. "Everything is live." Gabriel gave the slightest nod. Moments later, Isabella appeared at the end of the aisle. She smiled warmly as cameras flashed around her. To everyone watching, she looked like the perfect bride. To Gabriel, she looked like the final piece of a carefully constructed lie. She reached the altar. The minister welcomed everyone. The ceremony began. Several minutes passed. Vows, prayers, smiles. Then came the question. "Gabriel DeMarco, do you take Isabella Kensington to be your lawful wife?" Silence. The minister waited. Guests exchanged puzzled glances. Gabriel slowly turned away from Isabella. He faced the hundreds of people gathered inside the cathedral. "No." The single word echoed through the building. Confusion spread instantly. Isabella stared at him. "What?" I said no. Her smile disappeared. "This isn't funny." "I agree." He reached into his jacket. Gasps filled the cathedral as everyone assumed he was drawing a weapon. Instead, he removed a flash drive. Oliver immediately connected it to the cathedral's massive presentation screens, originally prepared to display wedding photographs. The screens came alive. Bank transfers, encrypted emails, shipping contracts, hidden accounts. One document after another appeared before every guest. Whispers spread across the room. Then came the recorded conversation from Isabella's dressing room. Her own voice echoed through the cathedral. "By tonight, the DeMarco Empire belongs to us." Damien Kensington's face drained of color. Isabella lunged toward Oliver. "Turn it off!" He calmly stepped aside. "There are 12 backup copies." Gabriel looked directly at Vincent. "You'd like to explain the offshore transfers?" Vincent laughed nervously. "This proves nothing." "Doesn't it?" Gabriel nodded toward another screen. A digital signature appeared beside every payment. Authorization code VD-17. Vincent stopped smiling. Guests slowly turned toward him. Gabriel continued. "For 5 years, I believed loyalty was inherited." He took one slow step forward. "I was wrong. It is earned." Vincent suddenly ran. He never reached the exit. Security officers surrounded him from every direction. These weren't the guards Vincent had bribed. They were Gabriel's oldest men. Men whose loyalty had never been for sale. Damien Kensington attempted to follow. Federal financial investigators entered through the main doors at that exact moment. Oliver had anonymously delivered every piece of evidence before sunrise. The lead investigator unfolded an arrest warrant. "Damien Kensington, you are under arrest for conspiracy, financial fraud, attempted murder, racketeering, and bribery." Panic exploded throughout the cathedral. Guests rushed backward. Photographers captured every second. Television crews outside pushed through the entrance as word spread across the city. The wedding had become the biggest criminal scandal in decades. Isabella looked desperately toward Gabriel. "You believe your assistant over me?" Gabriel answered without raising his voice. "No, I believe evidence. And I believe the woman who nearly died protecting me." For the first time, uncertainty crossed Isabella's face. "Evelyn is dead." Gabriel's expression never changed. "Is she?" The cathedral doors slowly opened. Every conversation stopped. Evelyn Brooks walked inside. She moved carefully, one hand resting lightly on a cane, her injuries still obvious beneath a navy blue dress. She wasn't wearing expensive jewelry. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. Yet every eye followed her. The woman everyone had called a traitor was alive. Isabella stumbled backward. "That's impossible." Evelyn continued walking until she stood beside Gabriel. She placed a thick folder on the minister's podium. "Original financial records," she said calmly. "Signed agreements. Payment confirmations. And surveillance photographs." She looked directly at Vincent. "You forgot one thing." He swallowed hard. "What?" "You assumed invisible people don't notice who walks past their desk." A courtroom silence settled over the cathedral. Gabriel looked at the gathered guests one final time. This wedding was supposed to unite two families. He reached for the marriage certificate lying on the altar. Without hesitation, he tore it cleanly in half. The sound of ripping paper echoed through the sanctuary. "It ends here." Behind him, police officers placed handcuffs on Vincent. Federal agents escorted Damien and Isabella toward the waiting vehicles outside. Flashbulbs exploded like lightning. Within minutes, every news network in the country would carry the same headline. The DeMarco wedding had ended before the vows. But the real story was the assistant who exposed an empire of betrayal. Gabriel turned toward Evelyn. For the first time in 5 years, he wasn't looking at the woman behind the desk. He was looking at the woman who had saved his life. For several long seconds after the arrests, no one moved. The magnificent cathedral that had been prepared for the wedding of the decade now stood silent beneath the weight of an entirely different history. Reporters crowded the entrance. Camera flashes illuminated the shattered ceremony. Guests whispered in disbelief. Yet Gabriel noticed none of them. His attention remained fixed on Evelyn. She stood quietly beside the altar, leaning lightly on her cane. The bruises beneath her eyes had not completely faded, and every step still carried the stiffness of someone recovering from injuries that should have claimed her life. She looked exhausted, but she was standing. That alone felt like a miracle. Outside, the media shouted questions from every direction. "Mr. DeMarco, did your assistant really uncover the conspiracy? Were you almost assassinated? Is the alliance officially over?" Gabriel ignored every microphone. Instead, he walked toward Evelyn. The crowd instinctively parted. For 5 years, journalists had photographed Gabriel countless times. Not one of them had ever taken a picture of the woman walking beside him. Today, every camera followed her. Evelyn lowered her eyes, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "I should leave," she whispered. Gabriel stopped. "No." She looked at him. "This is your moment." He slowly shook his head. "No." It never was. Without another word, he turned toward the waiting reporters. "You've spent the last 3 days asking the wrong question." The crowd fell silent. "You asked whether my assistant betrayed me." He glanced toward Evelyn. "You should have been asking who protected me." Every camera immediately turned toward her. Gabriel continued. Evelyn Brooks spent 5 years quietly preventing mistakes most people never knew existed. She uncovered financial fraud. She exposed an attempted takeover. She risked her life to protect evidence. And while many people assumed the worst about her, she was fighting to save every person standing here. His voice remained calm. But today, everyone will know her name. The applause began with a single elderly judge seated near the cathedral entrance, then another, and another. Within seconds, Hundreds of people were applauding the woman who had once been invisible. Evelyn blinked rapidly. She had spent years avoiding attention. Now she couldn't escape it. Later that afternoon, the DeMarco Executive Board gathered inside headquarters. The atmosphere felt completely different. Vincent's office had already been sealed. New security protocols had been activated. Gabriel entered the conference room carrying only one folder. Every executive stood. He remained standing instead of taking his usual seat. For years, he began, our organization believed authority belonged to titles. He placed the folder on the table. We were wrong. He looked toward the open doorway. Evelyn. She hesitated before entering. The room became completely silent. Gabriel walked to the chair beside his own. This seat has remained empty for too long. He gently pulled it back. I'd like you to sit here. She stared at him. I don't belong at this table. Several executives lowered their eyes. Gabriel answered immediately. No one in this room has earned that chair more than you. Slowly, almost reluctantly, Evelyn sat down. Gabriel addressed the board. Effective immediately, Evelyn Brooks is my chief strategic partner. Every major operational decision will require her approval. No one objected. Not because they feared Gabriel, because every person present now understood exactly how much the organization owed her. That evening, Gabriel visited Marion Brooks. Evelyn's mother looked healthier than he had expected, though age and illness had clearly taken their toll. She smiled warmly when Gabriel entered. So, you finally met my stubborn daughter. He couldn't help smiling. I did. Marion laughed softly. She inherited that from her father. Gabriel sat beside her. I wanted you to hear this from me. He handed her several documents. Marion adjusted her glasses. Her hands trembled as she read. What is this? The mortgage on your house has been paid. The medical debts have been cleared. Your treatment program has been fully funded. She looked up in disbelief. For how long? Gabriel answered quietly. For as long as you need it. Tears gathered in the older woman's eyes. You don't owe us anything. He looked toward the window. I owe your daughter far more than this. Several weeks later, life slowly settled into a new rhythm. The newspapers eventually moved on to other stories. The trials began. Damien Kensington, Isabella Kensington, and Vincent DeMarco each faced overwhelming evidence. Meanwhile, the DeMarco shipping network recovered faster than analysts had predicted. Not because of luck, because the woman who had quietly kept everything running was no longer working from the shadows. One evening, after another long day, Evelyn stepped onto the terrace outside Gabriel's office. The harbor shimmered beneath the setting sun. Cargo ships moved peacefully across the water. Gabriel joined her carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her. She accepted it with a grateful smile. I still think this office is too large, she said. You've complained about it every day. It echoes. I know. She laughed softly. It was the first completely relaxed laugh Gabriel had ever heard from her. After a moment, she looked toward him. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why didn't you replace me while I was gone? He answered without hesitation. Because no one could. She smiled. I mean, after everyone thought I'd betrayed you. Gabriel looked across the harbor before speaking. At first, I almost believed it. I hate that I did. He paused. But something kept bothering me. What? You never once broke a promise. Not in 5 years. I realized I trusted your character more than the evidence. Evelyn lowered her eyes. Thank you. He gently shook his head. No. Thank you. Silence settled comfortably between them. Not awkward, not uncertain. Peaceful. Finally, Gabriel spoke again. 5 years ago, I hired an assistant. He turned toward her. Today, I'm asking my partner to stay beside me. She looked at him, emotion filling her eyes.